Yeah, I record a lot of lessons with you guys because you guys are my first group that is usually working on a new lesson to go onto my YouTube channel. So they can't really see you. They just see me in the notes. We'll get started in 1 more minute. Again, you guys should just copy this down. We will discuss some of these laws, and then we'll get into the assignment on the Google Doc shortly. Okay, first thing I want to just mention specifically to class 8D6 on Monday. I'm just giving you this heads up. So once every 3 weeks, you guys have an overlap with class 8B6 and 8D7. Those particular classes are behind your class. So I need to focus on them. So when I see you second period, it is actually a class where you will not have to come to the live meet. All right, you will see how I kind of portray that. I know you guys aren't done copying, but I'd rather just show you this so you guys know what I'm talking about. So if you look at the scheduled assignment, so I'll share my tab here. If you look at the scheduled assignment, okay, it says here, oh, didn't want to do that, sorry. For Monday, please keep in mind that you do not have to come to the live meet. This is for 8D6 only, not 8A6. 8A6, I'll see you first period. So when you guys come in, you're going to have an assignment that you have to do, all right, that you're going to be working at Ellis Island, going on a virtual tour, answering some questions. When you're done with that, everyone is going to have a quiz on Wednesday, mini quiz, like 10 questions. All right, so if you finish that early, you could study. This is what you'll be doing on Monday when you come in. If you come into the Google Meet, I will obviously tell you you're welcome to stay, but you will not have to. So if you show up to the Google Meet second period on Monday, I'll probably say you do not have to stay and do the assignment that is posted. All right, so that is just for Monday, just for 8D6. All right, everyone else, let's go back to today's lesson and these notes here. So we're going to look at the 5 laws that discriminate against immigrants back during American history. We're going to break down each one. Some of these you would have seen yesterday in the assignment that we did. This is just going to further go into some more details to show you why and kind of the reasons why we had to discriminate and limit immigrants coming into the country. Now, you will watch a video today that kind of brings your realization, hopefully, of why we can't let in every single person to the country, and why there needs to be some type of limits. But some of these were obviously a lot more discriminatory than actually limiting. So we're going to look at these as a whole. All right. So first off, you guys remember the literacy test, right? We looked at the literacy test in preventing African Americans from voting. Okay. They're going to take that same literacy test and they're going to give that to certain immigrants. Specifically, immigrants that came into Angel Island, they had to take a literacy test. Now, we saw how hard it was for Black people to pass the literacy test. You'd imagine immigrants who couldn't read English or write English would struggle with this obviously as well. So this was a way that if you failed the test, you stopped immigrants from immigrating into the United States. That is number one, the first law that kind of came into place. Another law that we focused in on yesterday was the Chinese Exclusion Act. Okay, this is just a review from yesterday. It suspended Chinese immigration from 1882 to 1902. Specifically targeted Chinese workers. So if you were someone who wanted a job and was immigrating from China and you came into the United States, you would actually be sent home. You would not be allowed to come into the United States if you were from China from the years 1882 to 1902. Now, this is a bad law. I think everyone can agree with that. When you are eliminating, when you're specifically targeting one specific group of people because of the way they look, sort of thing, right, that's obviously a really negative thing. So the Chinese Exclusion Act does not obviously last today. If someone from China wants to come to the United States legally, they are more than welcome to. All right, but that was a law in our country for about 20 years. All right. Another group that was targeted was very close to China, the country of Japan, something called the Gentleman's Agreement. This was an informal agreement, so it wasn't a written law like the Chinese Exclusion Act. This was an informal agreement, so it's like something that both America and Japan understood. Basically, America said that they don't want any Japanese immigrants coming into the United States. The Japanese didn't want any people leaving Japan because they were what's known as a closed country, and they didn't want people coming to the United States as well. So they kind of had this agreement that if anyone from Japan was to leave, they were not allowed to come to the United States. All right, so if you were from China, if you were from Japan, at times in this country, you're really not allowed to come to the country. All right, think of the outrage it would be now if we said a specific group of people, a specific group from, let's say, Russia, or if you were a Polish immigrant, or if you were a, a Mexican immigrant. Think about the uproar that would go on if we said we're not allowing any Russians into the country at this point, okay, without any reason for it. It's a really unfortunate thing, but these were types of laws that did happen. All right. The biggest law that came out that probably came up the most was the Quota Act 2. Okay, so the Quota Act, so first off, you really need to know what a quota is. A quota is a certain number you need to hit to be of an accepting percentage. So the quota you have to hit to pass social studies in 8th grade is a 65. You need to have at least a 65 to pass my class. That's a quota you need to hit. So each area of the country, or each city, let's take New York City. New York City had a population count, okay? And that population count couldn't have more than 3% of a certain group of people. So let's take the Italians. If the population of New York City was 3.2% Italian, Italians were no longer allowed to enter New York City. Let's say the population of the Irish in the country was 4%, then they would not be allowed to enter the country anymore. All right, it placed a restricted number of people to come into the country, and this was
because of a quota.
Immigration. What's up, Jason?
It was because of a quota.
It was because of the quota, right? So if you hit that number, you are not allowed to enter. All right, so right now at PS 89, if you were to come into my room 405, it says you can't have more than 12 people in my classroom. So if there was 12 people there and the 13th person tried to enter, we've reached our quota. You're not allowed to enter the room. All right. And we had this as an immigration policy because we didn't want too many immigrants entering the country. All right. And if there was a lot of already one group of immigrants, they didn't really allow that same group in. Now, let's say New York City was 3.2% Italian. They wouldn't let any more Italians in. But let's say we only had 1.2% of Germans in the New York City. Well, then they'd allow German immigration. All right, so they allow immigrants from Germany to come in. So it just depended on what specific area you were coming from and if that area went over 3%. In 1924, they passed the Immigration Act, also known as the National Origins Act, and it took in that number from 3% and it brought it down to 2%. All right, so we even got less at this point, went from 3% to 2%. All right, and what happens is, it also a part of the law, if you saw yesterday, it banned certain Middle Eastern immigrants and Asian immigrants at this time. All right, so you really can only come in from certain places of the world. Now, all 5 of these laws, all 5 of them do not exist today. They've been taken out or they've been changed. So these laws do not exist today. All right. Are there certain bans? Are there certain restrictions on where people are coming from? Yes, that is something that is going on today. There's certain areas around the world, some Middle Eastern countries, some African countries, where the United States and that particular country doesn't get along so well. So right now there's some restrictions on immigration from those countries. But compared to what it used to be, it's clearly not as restrictive. All right, so these are the 5 laws that discriminate against immigrants. If you're not done, please just follow in the chat to copy it down. We need to move on to the Google Doc here. So if you go to the Google Doc, all right, which is on the screen, lesson 4, you'll see this that I shared with you. Okay, while we're setting up the video, you could answer question 1. Out of the 5 laws that you copied down, which one of the 5 laws do you believe to be the most effective at limiting immigration and why? Okay, based off of this particular law, which one of these laws was the most effective at stopping people from coming into the country or having too many people from coming into the country? So you may be of the notion, and maybe the person that says, why do we even limit anyone from coming into the country? Why don't we just let everyone come in? And that's a fine thought to have, but I at least want you to have some perspective on how incredibly big the world is, okay? Because I don't think you truly realize how big the world is and how troubling it is if you don't have at least some limits on the amount of immigrants that come into the country. So the way they're going to do this is we're going to watch a video that's dealing with immigration and gumballs. Okay, believe it or not. They're going to visually show you how many people are in the world, how many people make less than $2 a day, okay, how poor the world generally is compared to the United States, and it will kind of show you why it's so incredibly hard to take in all of these groups of immigrants. So while the video is going on, we're going to answer questions 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so preview some of these questions as the video is going. All right, I'm going to play the video. Give me 1 second to set it up. And just try and take in as much as you can so you have a better understanding why we have to have certain limits on immigration. Now, how much limits we have, that's going to be an opinion I'm going to ask you soon. But I at least want you to get a perspective of how big and how poor, unfortunately, the rest of the world is compared to the United States. All right, so give me 1 second to set it up. All right. I'm going to mute myself. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll answer some of the questions.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? Well, let's start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world, 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take 1 million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world.
Okay, so number 2. All right. According to the World Bank, how many people in the world make less than $2 a day? Anyone catch the number? How many people?
3 billion people.
3 billion people. That's almost half of the world's population. Okay, that's almost half of the world's population. Jeriel, number one is an opinion question. All right, so we're not going over that one together. Number three, how many immigrants out of the world's population do we bring in a year? That would be 1 million people. Okay, so just to give you an example, if you're looking at the screen here, these are the people in the countries that make less than $2 a day. These are the extremely poor people in the world. We usually take 1 million of these people and bring them into the United States. Now, here's the truth. We actually don't really pull from these groups of people because they're too poor to even have an opportunity to make it to the United States. Most of the people, one gumball is worth 1 million people. Yes, correct. Correct, Jason. Okay, so watch this. We don't even get our immigrants from this area because it's so incredibly hard. Watch the area.
Wait, what about question number one?
Guys, again, after the notes, it says, out of the 5 laws that you copied down,
What's your
5
opinion?
laws do you believe to be the most effective at limiting immigration? I'm asking your opinion. So you choose one of the 5 laws that you think is the most effective at stopping immigration. All right, so that's an opinion. All right, so now keep an eye on the speaker. All right, look at where we get some of the immigrants for, and then the question 4 and 5 as well.
And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country, but instead stay in their countries, to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, our immigration system tends to entice these very type of people to abandon their countrymen. The impossibility of making even a dent is actually worse than it looks here. Because last year, when we took 1 million immigrants, these countries added, births over deaths, 80 million more people into the impoverished population. And this year, Congress is bringing in 1 million legal immigrants. And this year, according to the United Nations, these countries are expected to add another 80 million people. And next year, you can be quite sure that Congress, unless stopped by the American voters, will bring in another 1 million immigrants. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. We could take 5 million a year, but we'd never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering people of the world. They have to be helped where they live. 99.9% of them will never be able to immigrate to a rich country. There's no hope for that. They have to bloom where they're planted. The only place that 99.9% of these people can be helped is where they live. Let's help them there.
Okay, so that is obviously a little bit of perspective just to show you how large the world's population compared to the United States is. So we're bringing in 1 million people a year, but as you can tell, it's very tough to really help out more than that because of the large population of people outside of the world. So hopefully you see it's very tough to let everyone in. Number 4 is asking, according to the speaker, why could we never bring in all immigrants and help out all poor people around the world? So obviously there's a large portion of numbers, but hopefully you also realize this. You notice the pink gumballs? Those are 80 million people that are born every single year over death. So we have, let's say, 150 million people born every year, okay, and let's say 70 million people die every year, okay, in those other countries. So they even bring in even more country people in these particular countries. So number 4, we can never bring in all immigrants, this is according to the speaker, because there are so many of them. And it would overwhelm our country. Okay? And then number 5, what does the speaker say is better than welcoming more immigrants into America? How should we help other countries that have many more people? So according to the speaker, okay, this is not fact, but this is according to him. According to the speaker, he says we should focus on helping immigrants. I shouldn't say immigrants, I apologize. We should focus on helping people within the countries they are born as opposed to increasing immigration. All right? So do you have to think the same way as this individual? Absolutely not. Okay, you're welcome to think the way you want to think. But the reason I showed this particular person is the way to show you how big the world is. When I say the word 7 billion people, that may not register to how big the actual world is. But when you actually look at the breakdown of the gumballs, you notice, okay, that's a good visual there, you notice how many people there are in the world compared to what America brings in. Okay, and these aren't even all the people. These are just the people that make less money than Mexico. Okay, so this isn't even all the people. It's even worse than this, the amount of people in the world. So we need to understand that it's not an easy thing to do. So what we're going to do now is, after the video, you're going to click on the Padlet, okay, that is on your screen. So the Padlet looks like this. Yeah, Christian. Yeah, if you write 100K and then you just keep adding the zeros, it is pretty crazy. Okay, this will be a little bit confusing. All right, so just kind of listen to my directions with it. It's very simple once you get the hang of it, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at I don't even know what else to call it, a timeline basically, not a timeline, a number chart for you to figure out where your immigration policy is. So one of the big things you do when you get older and if you do get into politics or you just have opinions on stuff is you need to figure out what your opinion actually is. So one of the major topics in our country is immigration. Should we have open immigration? Should we allow legal immigration? Should we allow illegal immigration? It depends based on what your opinion is. So we're going to look through 10 numbers going in increasing order to try and figure out what immigration policy you think is best. These question 6 and question 7 will all be opinions. Okay? It will all be opinions. So you want to see where you fit in. All right? So I'm going to read 10 scenarios to you. Whichever one you think is best is going to be the number that you're going to pick. Okay? So no, don't take 5 automatically. Let's see what it actually is. Okay. So number 1, if you believe that there should be no borders whatsoever and everyone should be free to live and roam wherever they want, Okay, so if you're from Canada and you come into the United States or Mexico, you can go wherever you want. Okay, there's no different countries. We're all one world. That would be a number one. If you believe, number two, I believe that there should be no borders, but immigrants can choose to move anywhere they want, legally or illegally. Okay, so maybe they're not allowed to roam wherever, but they're allowed to live wherever they want. Okay, there's no one stopping anyone from living anywhere. Okay, so if Mr. Panio wants to pick up and just go over to Britain, I can. If I want to go to Somalia, I can. It's up to me. Maybe you're number three. Number three, I believe that there should be borders of countries, but anyone is allowed to enter a country legally or illegally. So if they're able to enter a country, let's say from Mexico, if they want to cross the border and come into the United States, you have no problem with that as long as they come in and don't cause much of a problem. All right, let's see. Sorry, 1 second. All right, number four. Number four. I believe that legal and illegal immigrants are allowed to enter a country, but only illegal immigrants should be allowed if there is a tough circumstance, such as they are poor and struggling. So you're okay with a person not getting a country's approval to live in, but they should only be coming to the United States if there's like a bad situation. Maybe they're poor, they're not doing well in their country, they can get an opportunity in the United States. So let's say they're poor in Canada and they want to come to the United States.
Go ahead. Sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
So, all right. So is it coming like to live or to like vacation?
Correct. A good question, Shanika. I'm talking about live permanently, immigration.
Okay.
Okay? Not a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Number five. This is more in the middle. Five is maybe the only illegal immigrants that should be allowed in our country are the refugees, people that are escaping or about to die from a situation in their country, all right, such as a war. So they need to leave right now. Otherwise, they're going to be most likely hurt, killed, or injured. All right, so they need to leave so they can be safe in a safer country. And maybe that's your opinion. All right, number six. Okay, number six. No illegal immigrants, if you believe this, or refugees are allowed. But anyone who comes in legally is allowed to enter. You don't care what country they're from. You don't really care much about them. If they get approval to live in the United States, they are allowed to come into our country. All right. Let's try number seven. Seven, legal immigrants are allowed to come in as long as they are going to contribute to American society, such as have a job, pay taxes, and not break laws. So if someone's going to come into the country and not do anything and live off of the government and live off of welfare and unemployment, then they don't want those types of immigrants coming in. They want people who are going to hold a job and raise a family and not cause problems. All right, let's take a look at number eight. Legal immigrants are allowed, but they need to be wealthy and smart. No one that is poor and uneducated should be allowed to enter. You may support a border wall to ensure that people are not coming in who should not be coming in. All right. Number nine, only the best of the best legal immigrants are allowed in the country. They would support a border wall and laws as well to ensure no illegal immigrants are able to enter the country. All right. And then the last number is number 10. No immigrants are allowed to enter into the United States whatsoever. No legal immigrants, no illegal immigrants. America has to take care of its own and be protected. All right, so they would say no immigration whatsoever. So we go from number one, which is everyone's allowed to come to the country no matter what, and people are allowed to freely roam, to number 10, where no immigrants are allowed. Which number do you think you best fall underneath? Now, depending on the person, depending on the president, some people think differently. So when you guys were first born under Barack Obama, he would more likely be like a number 4, okay, maybe a number 5, where Trump would probably be more like a 8 or a 9. Okay, so it depends, you know, who the leader is at times. That's okay.
Wow.
Joe Biden, if he becomes president, I'm not sure where he'd fall. Okay, I'd have to kind of see. It hasn't been a huge topic. I'd probably say he'd be closer to like a 5 or a 6 than an 8 or a 9. Okay? So
We can only pick one number.
what you're going to do is you're going to pick one number. You're going to
Bro, this hard to choose.
Yeah, no, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Sebastian, again, that's your opinion, but like you shouldn't be posting that in the chat because there could be students here in the chat, and I've seen how students would have voted in the 2016 election and 2020 election. You know,
Oh,
it's your
sorry.
opinion, but
Sorry.
you post and stuff like that. Even if people agree or disagree, it's not what we should be saying about leader of country.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
Number 6, you're going to post your number to the policy. You're going to post it here in the chat, and then you're going to answer number 7. What did you choose? Excuse me. I made a mistake. It should be say, why did you choose that number, and why is that your immigration policy? Needs to be at least 3 sentences. So it's 12:29. You have plenty of time to come up with 3 sentences to come up with your immigration policy. Now, just based off of some of the early answers in the chat, okay, we got some 7s, we got some 4s, we got some 5s, we got some 6s. So it looks like you guys are towards the middle, which is good. That's how a lot of Americans feel. But if you are a number 2,
So all I have to do is add a number to number 6.
you're going to add a number to number 6. So yeah, just going to write one literal number to number 6, and then number 7 is going to be your
It's
exclamation.
either 5 or 7.
Right. Okay, so when you guys go through this, you're going to pick your number, all right, and then you're going to explain what your reasoning is. Now, if you're not sure, okay, so Jane chose an 8. Okay, if you choose an 8 or a 9, if you choose a 1 or a 2, nothing's wrong with that. All right, that is your opinion. Okay, that's why our country is our country. People have differing opinions on policies like this. Okay, so pick the one that you guys would want to choose. Okay, and then once you have all the questions answered and you have at least 3 sentences done, you guys can turn this in, and then obviously you can go. All right, but I am here if you have questions. Until then.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.